let's paint this new Antioch heavy mechanized infantry proxy pretty much entirely using a sponge. Now, this bit of kit is a game changer. It is called a piercing grabber. It's for use in jewellery, electrical, those kind of things. And it's essentially a pen with 4 prongs. You push that down and you can use it to grab your bit of sponge. I will put that and the link for the STL for this big boy in the description below. Well worth it. You can get them for a couple of quid. Go and check it out. So this wasn't the best 3D print. There's quite a few errors. Parts of it had split. However, I've decided to use it, give this a go, and utilize those errors and voids and bits and pieces of battle damage, because I want these to look battered and worn. So after priming the model black, what I do is I start going over that with a mix of dryad bark and scrap brown, covering most of the model because I want to be able to sponge the paint layers over the top. I then hit it with another sponge, watered down, less paint, so you see the layers of the other browns I've hit it with underneath, and the black and the base coat. Sponge those over the areas that kind of potentially hit the most light, so backs of the legs, shoulder pads, helmet, backpack, arms, etc. Because what I want is I want this to show through the actual armor color that I'm going to be painting it. I then hit this up with a mix of scrag brown and Troll Slayer orange, just to kind of push the highlight on some of those raised areas. Make sure some of those bits really pop once we start putting down the actual base paint for the armor. So I'm hitting this with wild flesh as my base, and I am covering all of the model with this, but I'm using it watered down on a sponge still, so the rust and the other layers of paint I've put down do show through underneath, as you can see. Big shout out to Feral Painter for his tutorial on the Black Legion Terminator that he did, which gave me this idea. Seriously, the guy's paint work is insane. His grimdark stuff is brilliant, so do go and check him out. You probably already know him if you found me in my tiny little corner of the internet. Then moving on, we use a mix of wild flesh and Strachan green, hitting more of the raised areas, making sure it's nice and watered down so you see the wild flesh and the rest of the colours underneath. And then I go over it again with just Strachan green on top, again just hitting the highest areas, the areas that are going to kind of pick up the most light. And honestly, I think after this highlight, you potentially, if you were happy with this and you didn't want to start playing about on enamels, you could leave it at this, you know, tidying up some of the details, painting those in. I'm really pleased with this, and I potentially should have left it here because there are parts of this armor as is that I actually prefer to the finished piece. However, next time and the next bit I'm going to paint up, I will kind of go less heavy on the enamels, kind of, or cleaning up more of it. I'm really pleased with the final result, but I think the way that this armor turns out without the enamel washes looks really nice. And I think that's the beauty of kind of doing stuff with sponges is you know, you can push it as far as you want. Once that's done, it's just a case of painting through the details, picking those bits and pieces out. So I hit the ammo belts, because being a history nerd, the MG108, which is this is modelled on, used like a fabric canvas belt feed that the rounds were slid into. So I've painted that with Wraithbone. I've then gone and hit up the metallics with the Vallejo metal colour gunmetal, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous colour, really nice, works great for an airbrush as well. Mephiston red on the shoulder pad, and then once that is all dried, I hit this up with an enamel, which is the MIG dark wash, and I put that all over the model. Once that is semi-dry, I then hit parts of it up to kind of bring out that rust and the battle damage a little more with the MIG light rust wash. So I add that into the grooves and around some of the edges on the gun, around the chains, some of that battle damage that I was talking about, and where this was a bit of a misprint. However, this did give me the opportunity to play with this and kind of make that look more like realistic, in quotation marks, battle damage. And then once that has dried, it's essentially a case of cleaning this up, using cotton buds, clear mineral spirits, and allowing a lot of that work and that hard work that you've put in onto the armor to really show through. It adds in those kind of natural highlights, darkening some areas. You can play about with it and make streaks and stuff like that. And honestly, it's talent in a bottle for enamels. It hides a multitude of sins and makes your painting look far better than it actually is from personal experience. Now, obviously, you can do, again, referencing Feral Painter and some of the guys that do the Grimdark Compendium, do some insane stuff with enamels. This is more of a battle-ready painting guide, if you will. I would like to push my experiences with enamels further, so do stick around and give us a like and a subscribe if you want to see me kind of pushing that stuff with some of this Trench Crusade stuff, because I'm going to really focus on this. So once that's all cleaned up, and again, you could go heavier with the cleanup, and I think I probably should have done on this. You can see a lot of the rust effects are showing through. The armor is nice and battered, and it's dark. There's lots of shadow where the wash is kind of sitting in some of those grooves, and then it's a case of just going back over. I wanted to push the highlights in some places, so I went back in with the Strachan green, and it not only does it push the highlights and the raised areas in some points, but because you're sponging it on, it looks like scratches, it looks like a bit more battle damage. It's just adding another layer of texture to your miniature to really make some of these kind of more flat armor panels pop a little more, adding a little more texture to the model. And then it's a case of just going back and putting out some of those highlights, so adding some extra highlights on the ammo belt, the grenades, the unit insignia on its shoulder, and I'm being fairly rough with the highlights just so they don't look too stark against the rest of the model. I wanted to kind of keep that textured impression. On the model, so it doesn't kind of like the armor doesn't look completely different to the rest of the equipment that is on this guy. So going back over with that gunmetal from Vallejo, highlighting up parts of the barrels. I also went through and added some 2 thin coats mithril blade as well, just to make parts of that armor, adding in some chips, really pop out so it looks like there's recent battle damage, not all rust. The last thing I do, or sticking him on his base, is I add in some more sponging with that gunmetal from Vallejo, just really lightly and very, very, very little on the sponge on to the armor, just to pick up some more texture and add some more bits and pieces to that. Now, the beauty of one of these little grabby tools is that you can use it essentially as a paintbrush. So rather than having to use a pair of tweezers, holding onto the bit of sponge and worrying about that grip, you can essentially use the sponge as a paintbrush. It's a lot more comfortable to use. You can get them for a couple of quid on Amazon. Like I said, I will stick a link below. If they don't deliver to you, if you're watching this not in the UK, then I'm sure you'll be able to find something similar just by sticking those keywords in the search tool. So yeah, what do you think? I'm really pleased with this, considering the majority of this was painted entirely with a sponge. I think this really suits the vibe of Trench Crusade. It's a great free sculpt on cults. Like I said, I'll put the miniature down below, so please do go and check that out. And yeah, I'll show you how to make some bases for Trench Crusade in another video, as well as some other scatter terrain, etc, etc. So hopefully catch you on the next one. Give us a like, subscribe. I do a lot of painting on Twitch as well as gaming, so come hang out and I'll catch you then. Peace.